Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. And today, we're being joined by Dr. Niama Malachi. Dr. Niama, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Well, we are thrilled to have you. Are you ready to begin?
Yes, and thank you very much for having me. It's very much appreciated.
Well, we are honored to have you on the show. And our first question is, what is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
I would say do your research on publishers or whoever you go to help you get your book published or do any type of PR for your book. And you can, do this during the writing process. I know the writing process itself is very tedious and time-consuming and requires a lot of concentration. But if you start to do that research ahead of time, once your book is finished, you'll be smooth sailing and you won't feel as rushed to jump into something without having knowledge about the publisher or any of the PR activity that goes around it.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
The hardest part is learning the industry for a first-time publisher if you've never been in that arena or that industry before. That's the hardest part. And that's why I really harp on doing your research and in learning the industry first, because it's a different world, especially if that's not where you're coming from, than any other place. It's like its own industry by itself. So I would do a lot of research and I would learn the publishing industry and the book industry and even how you sell and how you distribute and about royalties. It's a huge learning curve if you haven't been there before.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
Interesting enough, for my marketing strategy, I did a lot of online sales and a lot of online publishing. Not publishing, but a lot of online sales and a lot of online marketing. And so I even tapped into my own circle of friends who actually spread the word for me. And something really, really unique and interesting that I did, and I remember for it now, is that I took a list and I made a list of every person that I wanted to have my book as a gift. So as someone who wrote a book on hip hop, I wanted specific people in the hip hop industry and specific people in the entertainment industry to have my book and know that my book was there. So I actually ordered maybe 30 copies of my own book, and I sat down and I wrote their name in the book and I wrote a thank you to them. And I said something to the effect of, thank you for everything that you've done for the hip hop community, or thank you so much for all the knowledge that you shared with me. And I wrote these thank yous, and then I signed it as an autograph to them. And then I packaged it as a gift and directly mailed it to each person so that they can have it. Interesting enough, one day I was at an event maybe like 3 or 4 years later, and I finally got to meet the person face to face who I wrote the book for, who I sent the book to. And they thanked me a whole 4 years later for sending them that book and said that they had the book, they had it in their book stand, and they really liked it, and they just thanked me and praised me for the book. So it was really a different marketing strategy that I wanted to go into because I had a niche market. So I knew the people that I wanted to specifically reach out to. It wasn't a marketing strategy where I sent a lot of books to a lot of people. For me, it was those target people who could reach back to me or who I could later reach up to and ask for maybe, a speaking engagement or to have more discussions with them about what I wrote about.
So if you don't mind me asking, who are some of the artists that you sent the book to?
So I sent the book to See the God. He is I would call him a VJ or on one of the biggest morning shows in the country. I sent the book over to Common, who is he's a hip hop artist. He's an actor, activist, really well known named. I sent the book to Michael Eric Dyson, who is a professor and a very well known philosopher in the African American community. And interesting enough, he and myself and his wife now have a relationship on social media where I email her or she DMs me and we've exchanged contact information and we're still trying to, meet up. But I think that by doing that, I gave myself a reputation as someone who is an expert and knowledgeable about hip hop and how it impacts the African American community.
And if you don't mind me asking, who's the person that you sent the book to 4 years later thanked you for it?
That was Michael Eric Dyson.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know what is your favorite book and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
My favorite book is Maniac Magee. And Maniac Magee, I read that when I was in 5th grade. And it was about a kid, I believe he was homeless at the time, but he had his favorite pair of shoes and he used to eat butterscotch crumpets. And I just really liked his determination in the book. And a lot of the book was about him running. And I can remember that he ran a lot in those shoes. And he didn't stop. And so that was, one of my favorite books in it. And that always stayed with me as I grew older, even from 5th grade.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote is by Dr. Martin Luther King. And the quote goes, I just want to make sure I quote it right. But it says something to the effect of, if you cannot fly, then run. If you cannot run, then walk. If you cannot walk, then crawl. But by any means, no matter what, keep moving. And so that's just really impactful for me. And especially as it relates to book writing, it's impactful because it reminds you that no matter what the obstacle is, you have to continue to go. And as a book author and a first-time author, you do experience a lot of obstacles to the point where, sometimes you want to put your pen down, or sometimes you don't want to show up for an event, or you can even get to the point where you're completely sick and tired of your book and you never want to see it again or read it again. But it's yours, and so you can just pace yourself and do things a little bit at a time and slowly build the momentum and still be successful as an author. So it just reminds you to take your time.
Excellent.
But keep going.
Absolutely. Keep pushing, right?
Right.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
The best way to find me online, my website is thesocialconsult.org. So thesocialconsult, CONSULT.org. And I'm on all my social media handles is DRN Malachi Consult.
Well, I want to thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.